Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories from r/ohnoconsequences. In this Ripestories video, I spent 28 years as a firefighter. I thought I had seen it all, until an HOA Karen tried to use the law to force me off my own land. She kept escalating until one mistake brought everything crashing down on her. Let's dive right into the story. And the first one is titled, HOA Karen called cops on retired firefighter. So I'm a retired firefighter, put in 28 years with the department before I hung up my helmet and moved out to 3 acres on the edge of town. It is not much, just a small ranch house, a barn, and enough pasture to keep 4 horses comfortable. I'd been dreaming about this place since I was a rookie, and I finally made it happen 5 years ago. The land has been in my family since the 70s. My grandfather bought it when this whole area was nothing but farms and empty fields. He raised horses here, and my dad did too, for a while, and when I inherited it, I fixed up the old barn, built some proper fencing, and settled into the quiet life that I'd earned. Well, then about 3 years ago, they started building HOA estates. The kind of place with a homeowner association that sends you angry letters if your mailbox is in violation of their ridiculous rules, for example. By the way guys, in case my voice sounds a little bit weird, I'm sorry, but I'm still a bit sick. Anyway, now my property sits about a few hundred yards from the nearest house in HOA Estates HOA. There's a decent tree line between us, and I mind my own business. I've got my horses, my barn, and my peace and quiet. I'm not bothering anyone, but apparently I was bothering Susan. Susan was the HOA president, and from what I'd heard through, she took that job very seriously. In fact, too seriously. I first met her about 18 months ago. I was out there fixing a section of fence when she came marching across the field towards me, like she owned the place. "Excuse me," she called out. "Are you the property owner?" I straightened up and wiped my hands on my jeans. "That's right, can I help you?" She looked around at my property with this pinched expression, like she had just smelled something bad. "I'm Susan, the president of the HOA Estates HOA. I wanted to introduce myself and discuss some concerns we have about your operation here." "Operation?" I said. "I've got 4 horses, that's it." "Yeah, well," she pulled out her phone and started scrolling through something. "Several of our residents have complained about the smell and the flies, and frankly, the visual impact of having a farm so close to a residential community is affecting property values." "It's a ranch, not a farm," I said, "and I've been here a lot longer than your development. My family has owned this land since 1974. She gave me this tight smile. "Be that as it may, we are hoping you will consider relocating your animals, or at least reducing the numbers. 4 horses is excessive for a residential area, and you are violating HOA bylaws." I laughed. I couldn't help it anymore. "Ma'am, I'm not part of your HOA. I'm not relocating anything." My property here was first, it's grandfathered into the zoning laws. "I'm not part of your HOA, never was, never will be." Her smile disappeared. "We will see about that." She turned and walked away, and I figured that was the end of it, but I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in my mailbox. Susan's signature was at the bottom. It was informing me that I was in violation of HOA rules regarding livestock and agricultural operations within view of HOA properties. I had 30 days to remedy the situation or face fines. I threw the letter in the recycling and forgot about it. Then I got a visit from the county zoning officer. Someone had filed a complaint claiming that I was running an illegal commercial horse breeding operation on my property. The officer came out, looked around, checked my permits, and confirmed what I already knew, that everything was legal and up to code. He apologized for wasting my time and then left. A week after that, animal control showed up, another complaint, this time claiming that I was neglecting my horses. The officer spent about 5 minutes looking at my healthy, well-fed horses in their clean stalls before shaking his head and telling me that someone was clearly harassing me. Then it was the health department. Someone reported that I was creating a public health hazard with improper waste disposal. Then there was another inspection, another confirmation that everything was fine, and every single time I knew exactly who was behind it. And every single time the inspectors told me that the complaints were absolutely baseless. But Susan did not stop. I started getting letters from the HOA's lawyer. They were threatening to sue me for diminishing property values and creating a nuisance. I finally had to hire my own lawyer, who sent them a very polite letter explaining that they had absolutely no legal standing to tell me what to do with my property. That should have been the end of it. But instead, things escalated. One afternoon I was in the barn mucking out stalls when I heard someone shouting. I walked outside and found Susan standing at my fence line with her phone out taking pictures. "Can I help you?" I called out.
"I'm documenting the violations," she said, not even looking at me. "The mud, the debris, the clear signs of neglect. This is all going in my report to the county."
"There's no mud," I said. "It rained yesterday. That's what happens when it rains. The ground gets wet."
"Your attitude is exactly the problem," she snapped. "You have no respect for this community or the people who live here. You're selfish and stubborn and you're destroying our property values." I took a deep breath. I dealt with plenty of difficult people in my career, but Susan was something special. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to leave my property," I said calmly. "You are trespassing." "I'm on the easement,"
she shot back.
"This is public space."
"No, it is not. That is my fence line. Everything on this side of it is mine. And now please leave before I call the sheriff." She glared at me for a long moment and then turned and stormed off. I thought that was bad, but then she called the cops on me. It was a Tuesday morning. I was having coffee on my porch watching the horses graze when I saw the flashing lights coming up my driveway. 2 patrol cars. My first thought was that something bad happened to one of my neighbors. Then both officers got out and walked towards me with that careful professional expression that meant they were responding to a call. "Morning," the first officer said. He was young, probably mid-20s. "You the property owner?" "That's right," I said, setting down my coffee. "What's going on here?" "We got a call from a Susan claiming that there's a public safety hazard at this address." "Something about aggressive animals and unsafe structures?" He looked around at my neat property, my well-maintained barn, my horses peacefully grazing in the pasture. "I'm not seeing any hazards," I sighed. "Well, Susan is the HOA president next door. She has been harassing me for months trying to get rid of my horses." The second officer, an older guy, shook his head. "Is this the same address we got called out to 3 weeks ago for a noise complaint?" The first cop checked his notes. "Yeah." "And the month before that for another complaint, all from the same caller." "All false," I said. "Every single one. You're welcome to look around if you want. Everything is legal though, and up to code. I've been inspected by the county animal control and the health department. I've got all the paperwork inside if you need it." The cops exchanged a look. "That won't be necessary," he said, "but we do need to file a report." And by the way, guys, just to quickly interject here, if you had a neighbor that continuously harassed you and made your life basically a living hell, what would you have done if you were in OP situation? To be fair though, I thought that filing false police reports, which seems like that is exactly what Susan did, is a crime, right? So I'm not sure how she's always getting away with this. I mean, she's wasting police resources and time that could be spent on better things. Anyway, if you enjoy these HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much. By the way, another thing before I forget, a lot of my subscribers recently are posting in the comments telling me about channels that are re-uploading my videos, and I gotta say thank you so much for doing that. It is super helpful because every single one of these channels that has been reported to me so far has been shut down. Thank you for keeping an eye out for me. Anyway, the police then said, "Mind if we take a quick walk around just so we can document that everything is fine?" "Go ahead," I said. They spent about 10 minutes checking out the barn, the fencing, and the horses. Everything was obviously fine, but that is when Susan's car came screeching into my driveway. She jumped out, already talking. "Officers, thank God you're here. This man has been running an illegal operation for months. I filed multiple complaints and nothing has been done. Those animals are dangerous and that barn is a fire hazard." "Ma'am," the cop interrupted, "we've inspected the property. There are no violations and no hazards." Susan's face went actually red.
"That is impossible. I have documented everything. I have photos. I have witness statements from multiple residents."
"Ma'am," the other cop said, his voice firm, "there's nothing here. This is the 4th false report you have filed about this property. That is a crime." "It's called filing a false police report and we can charge you for it." Susan's mouth opened and closed like a fish.
I'm not filing false police reports. I'm trying to protect my community."
"By lying to the police?" the cop said. "Mr. he looked at me. OP, I said. "Mr. OP has been cooperative and patient. His property is legal. You need to stop harassing him and stop calling 911 with false complaints." Susan looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes.
"This is not over."
Then she got in her SUV and drove away. One of the cops pulled me aside. "Look, I would file a harassment report if I were you. She's clearly targeting you." I thanked him, and I did file the report. That evening, I called my old buddy Albert. We had gone through the fire academy together 30 years ago and stayed close friends ever since. I was not calling about Susan, though. I just needed to vent to someone who would understand the frustration of being accused of safety violations that you didn't even commit. Albert had dealt with plenty of false complaints in his career as fire marshal. I told him the whole story, and Albert listened patiently while I got it all out. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "That is frustrating as hell, man," he said. "People who make up safety violations to harass their neighbors usually are not very concerned about actual safety in their own projects." "What do you mean?" Nothing specific, just an observation from 30 years in this job." People who weaponize safety complaints are often the ones cutting corners themselves. He paused. "What subdivision did you say this was?" "A-hole Estates. Why?" I heard some papers rustling in the background. "They just finished building a new clubhouse, right? I've got that on my inspection schedule, actually. All new assembly buildings get inspected within 6 months of opening. It is state law. I'm scheduled to go out there in about 6 weeks. "Huh," I said. "I didn't even know they built a clubhouse." "Yeah, they had to get permits for it. Looks like it opened last month. Pool, gym, event space, the whole deal, you know?" He paused. "The HOA president's name is Susan, right?" "That's her. She signed off on all the construction permits, and she was the HOA's representative overseeing the project. We chatted a bit more about some other things and then said goodbye. I didn't think anything more about it, really. Life went back to normal. Susan seemed to have finally gotten the message after the police visit. I did not hear from her or the HOA for weeks. I went about my business, taking care of my horses, doing maintenance around the property, and enjoying my retirement. A while later, I'd almost forgotten about the whole mess with Susan. She had gone quiet after the police incident, though I heard through my neighbor Steve, one of the few reasonable people in A-hole Estates HOA, that she was busy with the grand opening of the new clubhouse. I was cleaning the barn one afternoon when Steve jogged over, practically out of breath. "Dude, you gotta hear what's happening at the emergency HOA meeting right now," Steve said, hands on his knees. "What meeting?" I asked. "They just called it this morning. The fire marshal inspected the clubhouse." Steve was grinning. Susan is in deep trouble. Apparently, Albert, my friend, had done his routine inspection of the new clubhouse, and he had found problems. A lot of problems. The emergency exits were not up to code, the fire suppression system had been installed incorrectly, the electrical work was not properly permitted, the occupancy limits were dangerously exceeded based on the actual exit capacity, and there were issues with the ventilation system, the emergency lighting, and the fire alarm panels. Steve said that people at the meeting were throwing around numbers between $50,000 and $100,000, depending on which contractor they hired to fix everything. And since Susan had been the HOA board member in charge of overseeing the construction project, she was being held responsible. "They are talking about suing her personally," Steve said. Apparently, she hired some cheap contractor her brother-in-law recommended instead of getting competitive bids like the bylaws require, and she signed off on all the inspections without actually having them done properly. I tried to keep my expression neutral. "That's rough." "Rough? Dude, it gets better." The clubhouse is closed until all the repairs are done. They're going to have to do a special assessment to pay for it. Everyone in the HOA is going to get hit with a bill. We are talking maybe $800 per household. Steve pulled out his phone and showed me the email that had just gone out. Sure enough, there it was in black and white. Special assessment $800 per household, due in 60 days. "People are furious," Steve said. "Susan is claiming the fire marshal was too harsh and that these are minor technical violations, but the fire marshal's report is public record. Half these violations could have gotten people killed if there had been a fire. Over the next few weeks, I heard bits and pieces of the fallout through Steve. The HOA hired an independent engineer to review everything, and he found even more problems the fire marshal had missed. Susan's contractor had cut corners everywhere." The HOA's insurance company denied the claim for construction defects because Susan had not followed proper procedures. That meant the HOA was on the hook for all the repair costs themselves. Susan was facing a lawsuit from the HOA for negligence and breach of fiduciary duty. Several other board members resigned in protest. Nobody wanted to be associated with the disaster. And Susan? Well, Steve told me she had taken out a mortgage on her house to pay for her legal defense. The special assessment went through. Every household in a-hole estates got hit with an $847 bill, and everyone knew exactly who was responsible for this. And I heard that people were confronting Susan in the grocery store, at the gas station, anywhere they saw her. Nobody was violent or anything, but the social pressure was intense. She had made life miserable for so many people with her petty tyranny as HOA president, and now everyone was paying the price for her incompetence. Susan resigned from the HOA board about a month after the inspection. Steve said she had sent a terse email announcing her resignation for so-called personal reasons. I never spoke to Susan again after the police incident, and I heard through Steve that she had resigned from the HOA board and was trying to sell her house. And the next one is another fantastic story from r/ohnoconsequences that you don't want to miss. It is titled "Customer Pays Extra for Being a Karen." So I regularly go to a hair salon to get my extensions done. The staff is super friendly and are always doing a great job. They have a 5-star Google rating and have been regularly awarded as top salon in a city of 3.6 million people. You get the idea. They objectively provide great service. A couple weeks ago, though, I was at the salon again getting my extensions fixed. My hairdresser, a super lovely woman, told me that she's in a bit of a bad mood since a customer did not show up for her appointment earlier that day without canceling. Doing extensions can take quite some time, and that is a lot of money lost for the salon. She also told me that a customer is a bit difficult at times. I understood how much of an understatement that was when said customer actually showed up, apparently 4 hours late, and demanded to be served. The owner of the salon told her that they don't really have the capacity to do her hair since the slots for the rest of the day are already booked. Karen then started aggressively rambling about bad customer service and how they should show some flexibility. I was just sitting in my chair, rolling my eyes so hard they nearly fell out of my head. After 5 minutes of discussion, the owner of the salon agreed to do her hair himself. Karen seemed to be satisfied by the VIP treatment. She sat down in the chair next to me and proceeded to start complaining about how the last time they did her hair wrong, how the quality of the hair was crap, the color was off, it wasn't, and so on and so on. She went on and on and on for a full hour. It was exhausting to say the least. The salon owner just kept smiling, doing the work while taking the verbal abuse. I was just thinking, why? Why do you let her treat you this way? After a while, Karen decided that she needed to take a smoking break and went outside for a bit, so I asked the salon owner, whom I've known for 3 years by now. I was like, dude, why the hell do you not throw her out? He just keeps grinning at me and says, oh, it's fine. I regularly charge her 2 times the actual rate for her hair and service. I call it the Karen tax. We had a good laugh, and I was just happy that Karen suffers consequences for her Karenness without even realizing it. That was very satisfying. And yeah, guys, I gotta say, that's actually a brilliant way to deal with customers who have this attitude of "the customer is king" while being total Karens themselves. Anyway, the next one is another very interesting revenge story, which is titled "Annoying Mildly Famous Celebrity on a Cramped Flight." Enjoy your superfan seatmate. Posted by user Doggo I Dozo on r/Ripestories. So the other day I was talking to a friend and told him a story from 2007. He said it was a perfect petty revenge moment and deserved to be shared here. About 20 years ago, I worked for a large American agribusiness multinational. I was assigned to one of the company's operational bases that supported a couple dozen industrial plants across Brazil. My job involved coordinating inventory control for spare parts and industrial maintenance and acting as a bridge between the Brazilian systems and the ones used by the parent company in the US. Because of that, I had to travel frequently between plants, especially during maintenance shutdown periods, but thankfully, the company paid for plane tickets because traveling by car across Brazil could literally take days. On one of these trips, I had to visit a plant in a mid-sized Brazilian city known for having a few local celebrities, and this story involves one of them. Alex, not his real name, but if you're Brazilian, you can probably guess who, was on the same flight as me. He was a moderately famous singer who had peaked a few years earlier as the lead vocalist of a pagode group, a very popular Brazilian music style in the 90s. The group got huge after one of their songs became the theme for a main character in a soap opera, which back then was basically instant nationwide fame. Think going viral on TikTok ×3. Later, he left the group to pursue a solo career singing romantic ballads, and he even performed in the US for some high-profile audiences. By 2007, his peak had passed, but he was still somewhat well-known. I was at Cohongas Airport in Sao Paulo, waiting for my late afternoon flight. And by the way, guys, apologies to my Brazilian audience members for absolutely butchering these names. It is a short flight, just over an hour, but the airport was chaos that day because of heavy rain delays. If you know Sao Paulo, you know how bad that gets. While waiting at the gate, I noticed Alex arrive and sit down alone, no security, no entourage. A few minutes later, some fans spotted him and rushed over, screaming and asking for autographs. Nothing too crazy, just the usual fan excitement. After about a 30-minute delay, boarding finally started. The plane was completely full. I was seated in an aisle seat near the front of the airplane, and guess who shows up to take the window seat next to me? Yep, it was Alex. Alex said, "Hey, I think that's my seat." Shows boarding pass. I stand up, he sits. Alex, "Looks like this flight is gonna take a while, huh? And it's packed." Me, "Yeah, it seems like it." Before I could even finish, he cuts me off and says, "Alex, I'm coming back from the US. I was doing a series of shows. You probably know me, right?" Me, "Yeah, I know who you are." But honestly, I don't listen to your music. I'm not really into pagode or romantic stuff. He immediately made the kind of face we call in Brazil, like someone who just sucked on a lemon. Conversation over. He lowered the armrest, leaned into my space, and basically took up more than his seat. Now, the plane was one of those tiny regional jets, I think an ERJ-145. If you have flown one, you know it's basically a flying sardine can. Him spreading out into my space made it even worse. Just before boarding finished, one of his fans, the more enthusiastic type, spotted him again and came over. She was super excited, trying to talk to him while the flight attendant kept asking her to go to her seat. Alex was being polite, I was stuck in the middle seat, squished, and the flight attendant kept insisting that she sit down, but she was not budging. That's when I turned to her. Me, "Hey, where are you sitting?" Fan, "Oh, seat X, back there on the other side." One of those single seats. Me, "How about we switch, then you can sit next to him for the whole flight." Fan, "Really? You would do that for me?" At that moment I looked at Alex and the man looked like he had just seen a ghost. Pure silent panic. I turned back to her. Me, "Of course. It's not every day you get to sit next to your idol, right? I don't mind making someone's day better." She was thrilled. I glanced at the flight attendant, who gave me a grateful smile for solving her problem. I then grabbed my bag, gave up my seat, and let the fan sit next to Alex. We then sat on the tarmac for another 30 minutes before takeoff. During the entire 1+ hour flight, she talked non-stop, and when we landed, went to baggage claim, she was still talking. Alex looked at me with the empty, hollow stare of a man whose soul had temporarily left his body as he tried to politely escape. I smiled, gave him a thumbs up, and walked away laughing. And the next one is a brilliant petty revenge story, which is titled, "My coworker kept taking credit for closing tasks, so I stopped reminding him about the one thing that made him look useful." So for some context, I used to work night shift at a small hotel front desk. There were only 2 of us, so it was pretty obvious who actually did the work and who just floated around looking busy. My coworker Eric was great at the second one. He would avoid the boring stuff like wiping down the coffee station, restocking keycards and getting breakfast set up ready, and then act like we had both done equal work. When the morning manager came in, he always made himself sound way more on top of things than he really was. The part that finally got to me was breakfast preparation. Night shift was supposed to leave things ready for the morning attendant, including moving the waffle batter from the freezer so it would be usable later on. Technically that was shared, but the only reason it ever got done was because I reminded Eric every shift around 5:10 I did it, because if I got missed, morning shift complained at both of us. But then one morning, Eric told our manager that I was forgetful about closing details, but that he always caught things behind me. After that, I stopped reminding him. I still did my own work, I just stopped giving him the one nudge that let him act competent. 3 shifts later, the breakfast attendant opened the freezer and realized the waffle batter had never been moved. Manager asked what happened, and Eric immediately tried to say that he thought I handled that part. My manager just looked at him and said, "I thought you said you always double-check behind her." The room got quiet real fast. He didn't get fired or anything, but after that he stopped acting like my supervisor in a name tag and somehow started remembering breakfast prep all by himself and helping me much more. And yeah guys, that dude definitely deserved that. People who throw you under the bus no longer deserve to be warned when it is coming at them. I hate coworkers like that. Thank you for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you again tomorrow.